Mad Riz in a baptism video. Never really thought I would hear that. All right, well, guys, in this series, we are finishing the statement, what our world needs now is blank. And myself, Joseph, and Jake, we're taking turns talking about different things that the world needs today. Now, these aren't things like our world needs a new leader, and we need to get rid of the person who's there now. We need to fill that role with somebody else. This isn't us coming up with what we believe the world needs now. This is us knowing what the world needs now because of what the writers of Scripture said our world needs now. You see, in week 1 of the series, we talked about how God needs us to become these mature followers of Jesus. That doesn't happen overnight. The same way that you don't wake up in the morning and all of a sudden you are a mature adult. It takes time. It takes work. It takes intentionality. And for us to become a mature follower of Jesus, it takes time. It takes work. But one of the best ways that we are able to express what it is like to be a mature follower of Jesus is through love. And you see, love is we know is so important because Jesus said that love was the most important thing. Jesus said that for us to become more mature followers of him, we needed to first love the people around us. And then in week 2, Joseph hit us with joy. And he was talking about what it's like to have joy in the midst of all circumstances. That regardless of what is going on around us today, that we can still experience joy in a different way. And then last week, Jake, he talked about kindness and how kind doesn't always mean nice. But as followers of Jesus, we need to be kind to the people around us. And tonight, we're going to add another thing that I fully believe our world needs a whole lot more of. But first, I need to ask you a question. Now, I don't want you to answer this question out loud because I don't want you to offend the person that you are sitting next to. So don't answer it out loud because your answer might be different than what theirs is. But I want you to answer this to yourself. Who do you trust most? Who do you trust most? Now, right away, some of you immediately thought my best friend. I trust my best friend so much. I trust them the most. And my hope is that your best friend that you trust the most is sitting right next to you right now. And if they're not, why not? But maybe you need to get them here. But my hope is that you all have a best friend that you're like, I can trust them. I don't know what that was right there. I can that you can trust someone who is your best friend. Maybe some of you thought, I immediately you're like, I thought of my mom, or I thought of my dad. Maybe you are someone who has a great mom and dad who know that as long as I'm talking to them and talking about my life, that they care about me and they just want what's best for me. And so they are people who I can trust to go and talk to. Maybe some of you immediately thought my small group leader. You're like, they have been through some stuff with me. And guess what? They are still here every Wednesday. And so I trust them. The reality is that I may have asked that question and nobody popped into your head. You didn't immediately think, that's the person who I trust. You didn't think of a best friend. You didn't think of a parent. You didn't think of a small group leader. Because the reality is trust is difficult. And we live in a world that it's hard to trust people. It might be difficult because you trusted somebody before and they hurt you. It might be difficult because you grew up being raised and your parents just said, don't trust anyone. Trust is something that can be difficult, and it's something that can be really hard for us to find. But I think it only takes a few things for somebody to truly be a trustworthy person. I believe a trustworthy person, I believe that they listen. That they listen to me when I need something and when I just need to vent out to somebody and say what's going on in my life. They are there sitting, locked eyes, and I know that they are just listening to me and what I need right now. That in my time of need, they are going to be there and they're going to hear me out. Somebody who's trustworthy, they are present. That in moments when it is just me and them, it is like it is just me and them. That they're not sitting there scrolling on their phone, not looking at Instagram, not on TikTok while we're hanging out together. Like, it is us too. We're hanging out. And it's they are present in mind, they are present physically. And I'd say third, that they are faithful. That they are by my side until I give them a really good reason to no longer be there. And not like I just made them mad, like a really good reason for them to no longer be by my side. They listen, they're present, they are faithful. For me, the person that I trust most in my life is my wife. And I hope that one day if you choose to get married and you find somebody that you would trust them more than anybody else and they would trust you more than anyone else. But I know that when I am mad and I actually open up about what's going on in my life, my wife, Justice, she will sit there and listen to every single word I have to say. When CeeDee Lamb, the wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys, signed some really big contract, and I'm geeking out about how he's going to get paid for the next 4 years, what this means to the other players on the team, she sits there and she listens for some reason. She's just there, and she's on top of that, she's present. I mean, yes, obviously I sleep next to her every single night, so she's present, but also we go out to eat together, we sit on the couch and we talk, we watch the same TV shows, like we're present in each other's life, we do other things together, if you know, you know, and we are just present in each other's life. And lastly, she's faithful to me, and I am faithful to her. I mean, we are faithful to one another. And for me, that's probably the craziest one out of all of these, because I know myself better than anybody else knows me. And what I know about myself more than anything else is I would not choose to be with me. Because sure, I feel like maybe I'm kind of a nice guy, but I talk way too much about sports and video games. I'm messy. I'm picky about really weird things. And I would just not choose to be with someone who is like me. But she did. And she continues to choose me every day, and I choose her. And for that reason, we are faithful to one another. This idea of faithfulness and trustworthiness, they're really trying to communicate the same thing. They communicate the same thing today, and they communicated the same thing way back when the Bible was being written. Let me geek out here for just a second. The writers of the Old Testament, when they talked about God's people, these were the Israelites, the Hebrews, the Hebrew, and the Jews. When they were talking about these people, they would use a term when referring to God as he is faithful. And that word was emet. Emet meant faithful. But also, emet was also used in a different way. Emet was also used for somebody who was trustworthy. Somebody who was trustworthy, they would say they are emet. That they would coincide together. Emet meant faithful, and emet meant trustworthy. And so what we can take away from that is, according to the writers of Scripture and the words that they used, they would say that faithfulness and trustworthiness, they go hand in hand. In order for somebody to be faithful, they are also trustworthy. And for somebody to be trustworthy, they are also faithful. Now you might be asking, Coleman, why does all this matter? Why are we talking about a word that I've never heard in my entire life? It's actually in a different language that none of us speak. Why does this even matter? And that's a great question. Because I want you to see that these things go together. That so much of the time when we think about somebody who is trustworthy, somebody who is faithful, we can put two different definitions in our head. But truly, these two things go hand in hand. And that information alone changes nothing. It changes nothing. Because whether you knew that before or not, it was true. Like whether you realize it or not, that when you find somebody trustworthy, you also believe they're faithful. And when you find somebody faithful, you also believe they're trustworthy. Whether you realize that or not, it changes nothing. It might change a little something for those of you who struggle to trust people because you're like, now I got to trust somebody and they have to be faithful to me. That might change a little bit for you, put a little more stress on it. But truly, faithfulness and trustworthiness are the same thing. Somebody who is faithful, they are also trustworthy. And what our world needs now are people who are faithful. And for the majority of the rest of my sermon, as I'm going through this whole thing, I'm going to be using the term faithful. But remember that faithful also means trustworthy, and trustworthy also means faithful. So I believe our world needs people who are faithful. Why? You already know why. You know why our world needs more people who are faithful, because we all have people actively in our lives or who have been a part of our lives in the past who we know they are faithful to nothing. They aren't faithful to anyone. That we all know that person who's like, their friend came and told them something during first period, and by third period, the entire school knew what that friend shared. That person is not faithful to their friend. We all know that boyfriend or girlfriend who's dating someone, but they're always willing to have overly nice conversations with somebody else. That person is not faithful to their boyfriend or to their girlfriend. Our world is full of people who aren't faithful. Our world is full of people who are not trustworthy. And our world needs to be able to trust in one another. But here's the truth. I honestly believe, I truly believe that we cannot live out a faithful life. We cannot be faithful to somebody else without being modeled faithfulness first. Because this whole idea of faithfulness or trustworthiness, it goes completely against our natural inclination. We don't naturally want to trust people. We don't naturally want to open up to people. And if it's not modeled for us first, then guess what? You're not going to be faithful. The unfortunate thing is, many of us were not modeled this in a good way. Many of us, our parents didn't show us what it meant to be faithful. Many of us don't have friends that we feel are faithful friends to us. And so we feel like when we're thinking about a model of what faithfulness is supposed to look like, we just don't have it. And so we don't have that model. How in the world are we supposed to be faithful to other people? Well, the good news is Jesus knew this about us. Jesus knew that we weren't going to have a whole bunch of models of what true faithfulness actually looks like. And so he modeled it first. Let's take a look. Where I want us to be today is we're going to be in Luke chapter 22. This is towards the end of the life of Jesus. Luke is one of the Gospels, which is one of the 4 books written about the life of Jesus. Luke, who didn't really ever follow Jesus when he was on earth, he did get all the people who followed Jesus, or a lot of people who followed Jesus, and he interviewed them. And Luke was very detailed, so Luke just wanted to get an account of Jesus' entire life. And so he writes down everything that he got, and towards the end of the life of Jesus, when he's having his last meal with some of his closest friends, Jesus turns to his best friend, Peter. And honestly, when you look at the context, it's kind of out of the blue. Like they're sitting there talking, Jesus talking about the end of his life, yada, yada. And then it just kind of turns to this. Jesus looks at his best friend, Peter, and he says this. He says, Simon. Simon is Peter. His name was Simon Peter. Same person. Simon, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat, but I have prayed for you Simon, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. Jesus is pretty much saying that, hey, Simon, I know that Satan is going to test you. In fact, he's going to test all of you, and I know that you are going to fail. And see, Peter here, he was kind of known as a guy being kind of impulsive. He made a lot of decisions really quick. And so Peter, he immediately goes into he says, Lord, I am ready to go with you to prison and to death. Like, he's gonna beat his own chest here. He's like, man, I am ready to follow you. Like, dude, you're my guy. We are best friends. I will follow you to the ends of the earth. I will go to prison for you. I will die for you. And you're telling me that I'm going to fail you? Peter was offended by this. He's like, we are best friends. Why would I ever fail you? And why do you know this? And then he goes on and he says, I tell you, Peter, before the rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. You will deny 3 times that you know me. So what he's saying is that Jesus knows what Peter is going to do. Jesus knows what's about to happen. I mean, Jesus can see the future. He's like, I know you're going to fail me. I know that this is going to happen. But what I find very interesting is Jesus said this at the very beginning. He said, but I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail. I find this interesting because it shows Jesus' faithfulness to his best friend. Because even in the midst of his friend's weakness and betrayal, he still found the strength to pray for him. So what happens? Well, exactly what Jesus said would happen. See, Jesus was arrested and he was taken away. And that night, Peter was identified 3 different times by 3 different people who all accused him for knowing Jesus. The reason why this was bad was Peter could also be arrested and put into prison. Peter had just said, I will go to prison for you. And now he is denying even knowing Jesus so that he doesn't go to prison. And so these 3 different people say, hey, I know you. You know that Jesus guy. And he goes, nope, not me. You got the wrong guy. I've never met him before in my life. And then another person, yeah, you knew him. He's like, nope, not me. I don't know him. And then finally a third person, you knew Jesus. And Peter says, nope, it's not me. And as soon as he said no for a 3rd time, it says that a rooster crowed. And Peter knew what he did wrong. It was in that moment that he knew that he wronged his friend. And he was left to cry alone. It just says that he wept by himself. And to me, I would be pretty upset with my friend. Like, in this situation, I would be ticked off. Like could you imagine telling your friend something and you were like, hey, I'm going to tell you this and I don't want you to tell anybody else. Like don't share it, keep it to yourself. And you're super clear with them. Like, you're like, keep it to yourself. And then your whole friend group knows the secret that you told your friend. Like, you're going to be upset with it. And that's just a secret. Now imagine if your best friend was approached while they were at Shields and said, hey, do you know so-and-so? And they're like, nope, never heard of them in my life. Don't know them. No idea who they are. You'd be ticked. Your friend was like, no, I have no idea who that person. You would be so upset. I would be so upset. Jesus has every right to be so upset. Jesus has every right to kick Peter out of his life. But the way that Jesus handled it surprised even Peter. You see, Jesus would then go on trial. He'd be found guilty. He would die on a cross, and 3 days later, he would come back to life. And that's probably the quickest way that I can describe the most pivotal moment as a follower of Jesus. But Jesus dies, and he comes back, and he sees all of his friends together. Even Peter. And Peter, he knew that what he did wrong. Peter knew that he had wronged his friend. He knew that Jesus told him he was going to do it. He told him that he wouldn't. And so he knows that Jesus knows. And he's like, I got to go talk to him. I got to figure out a way. But before he could even apologize to Jesus, Jesus goes to Peter, and 3 times Jesus asks Peter if he loves him, mirroring the 3 times that Peter denied Jesus. And each time, Peter, he affirms his love for Jesus. And Jesus responds by giving him a charge to feed my lambs, to take care of my sheep, and to feed my sheep. The point of all of this is despite Peter's failure, Jesus remains faithful in his promise. He restores Peter. He reaffirms his role as one of his closest friends, and he entrusts him with what is going to be one of the most significant responsibilities, which is now starting what we now call the church. And this is a clear demonstration of Jesus' faithfulness because he doesn't abandon Peter because of his failure. Instead, he draws him back into his purpose. That is faithfulness. Faithfulness to one another is accepting that somebody is going to let you down. It is going to happen. Your best friend is going to disappoint you. Your mom and your dad, they're going to tick you off. Your small group leader is not going to show up to that game one time, or they're not going to be there that one day that you really, really needed them. And they're going to make you upset. But true faithfulness is not abandoning them because of their failure. It's instead pointing them back to their ultimate purpose. Think of it like this. Faithfulness isn't just a trait. It's a choice to stand by others, just like Jesus stands by us, no matter the cost. See, Peter didn't deserve the faithfulness of Jesus, but he got it anyways. And let's be honest, we don't deserve the faithfulness of Jesus, yet the writers of Scripture, they promise us that Jesus will be faithful to you and to me. In the same way, we have to choose to be faithful to one another. But how? I believe that we have to be faithful to ourselves. We have to ask ourselves tough questions like, am I a trustworthy person? Am I faithful to my best friends? Am I faithful to my family? Am I faithful to my significant other? Are you being trustworthy and faithful to the people that you care about the most? I believe we have to be faithful in community. Are you the type of person that people can rely on? Are you the type of person that your small group can rely on? Are you the type of person that your classmates can rely on? Are you faithful to the people who are around you? And most importantly, we need to be faithful to God. You see, your faithfulness to others stems from your faithfulness to God. And by staying rooted in your relationship with Jesus, you can be empowered to be faithful in all areas of your life. So my challenge for you this week, my challenge for you is to simply find a place where you can practice faithfulness. Maybe you just need to shut your mouth when your friend is telling you something, when they're telling you a little bit of tea. You need to keep it to yourself. You need to listen to what they have to say. Maybe you just need to be there while they vent to you and they say why they're so upset about the weekend that they had, the long weekend they just had with their family. Maybe you need to be more faithful to God. And you need to get back into your devotional or spend a little more extra time in prayer. But you need to find a place this week where you can practice faithfulness. Remember, faithfulness, it isn't just a trait, it's a choice to stand by others. And by doing so, you are going to be part of what our world needs now.